Near-death experience isn't given just to those who have the experience. It's given to all of us to learn from, because all of us can profit by the lessons that near-death experiences learn in the course of the life review or other aspects of their experience, and we can grow from these lessons, and we can apply these lessons into our daily life.
As a culture, we believe that death is the end of everything, that it's the scariest thing we'll ever experience while we're here in human form. And I guess if you don't hear anything from me, I want you to know that it's so magnificent on the other side. It's such a joy to be on the other side. And that from here, it's a graduation. It's not an ending. It's a continuation in your soul's evolution. It's a moving into new and more uplifting adventures. It's not a loss of anything. And your energy continues on.
And now I'm in front of the light. And the light is so warm and so glowing and so forgiving. And the light had no judgment. There was no condemnation. There was no blaming, no shame. There was nothing but love and acceptance. And the light was viewing me. The light knew everything that I ever thought, did, or will do. It knew everything.
And the light consisted of a love that I cannot even describe, no matter how hard I try. There are no words to describe this kind of light, this kind of love. The love said to me without any words, "You are my beloved soul. I love you with all of my heart. I love you without condition. You are precious to me beyond belief." This is what I was getting from just being immersed with the light.
And it was such an intense experience because it was as though many of you have had the experience of having a little baby and just pouring your love into that baby and everything you are and all of your hopes and dreams and everything you are. And in this situation, I was that baby, and Christ was just filling me, pouring his love into me. And it was remarkable.
And so the love felt like I was the last newborn child to be born that's ever lived or ever will live again in the entire history of the universe, being hugged, loved, cradled, and cherished by every mother that had ever lived before that. Imagine what that must be like. You mothers in here know what that felt like when you held your first baby for the first time. Imagine on the scale I just told you, and then realize that is nowhere near good enough to explain what happened. That is, it was trillions and trillions of times infinitely more special than that. And I had no idea that I was that loved. And I know it's the same for each and every one of you. That's the unconditional love that was flooding through me. Just, and if a light, I know this, that God was a being of light, pure consciousness. I don't know how to explain it all. I was just there trying to understand the power of everything that was going on. But if a being of light could do backflips with extreme joy and saying, "Wahoo, yes, he's home, let's have a party," that God was thrilled to see me again. Absolutely mind-bogglingly thrilled that I was there again. And it's going to be the same way for you when you go home. Speaking of home, I knew I was home. There was this energetic information of feeling like I was home, like I had never had anywhere here or ever will. It was my source of origin, my point of creation. I knew I was in the presence of my Creator. I knew I am far more special than I had. I had no idea that, and we're all that way. It's the same for everybody.
And there before me was the living presence of the being of light. And this being was all-knowing. It knew everything that was going to happen and will happen, and the reasons behind them. And there was a perfect justice, and it also contained all things that ever were or will be. And it was loving me. It was just pouring out this unconditional love at me. And I thought, well, this isn't the guy on the top of the Sistine Chapel. I had this, image of what God would be like, but I figured this has to be God because this is beyond words and perfect in every possible sense.
But it's really all about love. And once you love somebody and there's no baggage, once you can just love them and they can love you with no baggage, that's God. That's God in action. That's what God let me feel.
That's what I felt like. I felt like I was sugar daddy. And I felt like I was sugar. And I was stirred into this infinite bowl of light water. And although I was still Andy, I remember being Andy. Although I was still Andy, I was now the light. And every other piece of the light there was the light. And it was fantastic. And it was so fun because the light is really very humorous. It's a fun place to be. It's kind of like McDonald's on steroids. It's a fun place.
I immediately felt this overwhelming sense of unconditional love. Love like I have never felt before. No matter what I had been through in my life, no matter what I had done, it was just complete love for me. I was bathing in it. It was wrapped around me, and it made me feel valued, appreciated, and accepted. The next thing I felt was an overwhelming sense of peace, that everything was okay and that everything was right, that all was well. I was getting a healing. I started to notice all the areas in my soul or in my energetic space where there were wounds or there were holes, and all of those areas were starting to get filled in, and they were getting filled in with love. I was being replenished, and it was the best feeling. It just made me feel like this is who I am. This is who I'm supposed to be. This is what my soul is all about.
So I saw my innocence, and that was mind blowing because, for years I had carried around immense shame, and for all kinds of things, just shame. For a lot of different reasons. And I think most people carry around a lot of shame. And that was cured in one fell swoop. The shame was gone. I knew I was innocent. The other thing I knew was that life was completely safe. My life on earth and here and in this other realm was always safe. There was nothing to be afraid of ever. I also saw that it was all perfect. It was all for love, and it was all perfect. Even when I couldn't see it, in the state I was in my NDE, I could see why. I could see it all come together. Like seeing the big picture of things. Like, oh my God, it's all. It inspired within me feelings of absolutely indescribable gratitude for my life. Life was beautiful from that perspective. It was so meaningful and so rich with experience and love and connection and beauty and all of that and more.
but I felt him get on a knee and give me a hug. And it was like the biggest, I felt real arms around me. And I was wondering, can I just go with you now? Like, I don't really want to go back where I was. I felt so much love. And I said, well, let me get perfect. I don't deserve to be in your presence right now. Let me go back and live, get perfect, and come back. He's saying, no, I love you how you are now.
I saw the things that I thought were mistakes, and I realized there's absolutely no mistakes. It was all in perfect order. I saw the things that I had done wrong, so to speak, and I knew they were wrong, and I did them anyway. And yet in these beautiful arms, all I felt was, look how much we love you. Look how much we support you. Look how much we honor your life, your choices, your decisions, your learning. We love you. It was such an overwhelming, profound, absolute, unconditional love. And in those arms, the I am that I am, I knew I was perfect. And that took me years to say too, but I felt this absolute perfection about my life, about me. And when I say that, I mean all of us. Absolute perfection, absolute order. I knew that I was absolutely divine. That not only was I connected to that, but I came from all that.
But I can tell you one thing for sure. There was no judgment. There was no atonement. There was nothing that I had ever done that was completely forgiven. And forgiven in that context meant it was gone. It did not exist. You know, the stupid little boneheaded things I've done in my life that have been, you know, well, let's just say less than wonderful. I didn't have to atone for that. God wasn't holding me accountable for that. God was loving me right through it. And it was total and complete forgiveness.
We don't have to prove ourselves to be loved by God. That came with our creation. You don't have to be anything but what you are. Because what I learned on the other side is there is no judgment on us. None. Zip. Nada. We have to stop judging ourselves, because if God isn't judging us, what are we doing judging ourselves as harshly as we do by listening to that stuff in our heads? We have to trust that we are, in our hearts, a form of God, that it's our connection through love to God, and that the ego has no part in this, and not to listen to all the negativity. You know, it's like when we pay attention to our brains, it's a stream of negativity coming at us most of the time. You'll never hear Spirit speaking that way to us. Spirit is only speaking out of love. It's only through heart connection.
I start watching kind of in 360 Technicolor in the atmosphere around me, all of the events of my life unfold. And it was incredible. The great decisions that I had made, the contributions that I had made, the little small things that I'd done to make somebody's day, and then there were the things where I hadn't used great judgment. And the one thing that really sticks out that just tickles me and shows me that the universe has this incredible sense of humor is there were these cringeworthy moments, absolutely, where you knew what was coming. And if I have to tell you that there was any kind of experience or any kind of negative aspect of the experience, that was it, and it's not even negative. It's that kind of, ooh, I see what's coming up and I know what I did there. And you're looking around, well, who's judging this? That, you know, I was taught my whole life that somebody was going to be judging. So, you know, and I'm looking, and it's still just me and my cheerleaders, my guardians. And I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't how I was taught this works.
And we laughed and we played. And by the way, the light has a fantastic sense of humor. We would view some of the really silly things that I did in my lifetime, And we'd be laughing at how serious I took them. Because life down here is an illusion. It's a game. Don't take it so serious. The life has a wonderful sense of humor. And we're laughing and we're talking and we're just having a great time.
And I also discovered that God has a sense of humor because we chuckled at some of the events that we looked at. And that was very relieving to me. God is not or in my experience of all this, not judgmental in any way at all.
So I'm looking, there's no judge, and I'm realizing, oh, wait a minute, I'm judging this. Oh, well, I'm going to be really kind to myself here. And I'm seeing these experiences take place, and the feeling that I'm having is one of empathy for me in the decisions that I made with the tools that I had at the time, and for the other person who's experiencing my lack of judgment at the time, or what we might consider hurtful behaviors. And I'm watching, and I'm kind of very detached, and I'm going, okay, well, if I were doing that again, I might do it this way. And I'm thinking, and I'm integrating those thoughts. And that was it. There was no wrath. There was no judgment, just this peaceful, loving space of everything's okay.
But I saw my whole life in front of me. It was more the essence of my life from which I didn't even know that it existed. It was condensed to one spot. Everything was overlaid and it was completely good, which confused me because I'd never had an impression that everything had been good in my life.
We're all here to learn. We're all here to do better and be better. How you treat others and stuff. Oh, and there's no religion. That's the other thing. If you go there, there's no religion. There's no priest, there's no rabbi, there's no bishop, there's nothing. It does not matter. Nothing. So when I hear someone say, well, you're going to hell because you're not this and this, I'm like, trust me, you're in such a surprise when you get there. Because it's so not relevant. It's just not relevant. And the important thing is that you learn, however you learn about God and being a better person, however you get that experience, that information is good, right? But there's no right or wrong religion at all. So long as you're a good person, you are following God and all that, that's what matters. It doesn't matter how you get there, but no, you're not going to go there and see a priest and a rabbi and all that. No, not at all. It's so just not part of the process at all, at all.
I've encountered nothing but beauty, love that I didn't even know existed. Everything since I crossed over to this place has been perfect and beautiful and totally loving. What about my sins? And he said to me, there are no sins, not the way you think of them on earth. He said, the only thing that matters here is what you think. And he asked me a question. He said, what is in your heart? And in some way that I cannot ever understand or describe, I was enabled for a few seconds to look into my soul, I guess, the deepest part of me. They say the heart is the gateway to the soul. I think that's where I went. I saw what the core of me was, and it was love. It was perfect love. It was the same thing that I had been immersed in with the light. That was the core of me. And I knew it wasn't just the core of me. It was the core of human beings. It was the way in which we are created in the image of God. That's the part. We are that piece of God ourselves. That is who we really are. And I remember thinking, of course, of course. I used to know that. How did I ever forget that?
So talking about this unconditional love, how does that, in your experience, fit with the interpretation in dogmatic religion of an angry and judgmental God?
No such thing. No such thing. The God force, power that I felt was totally forgiving of any so-called error. In my wildest dreams, I can't conceive of God being interested in punishing. God is interested in bringing us to Him, to love. Punishment just isn't God's game. God is for us, not against us.
What I experienced, that love that I experienced, did not fit with the story I've been told how Christianity works. And because I knew the love was unconditional, flat out unconditional. And I wish I could go around and touch people and just have them experience that degree of love like I did, so they knew what I'm talking about. And sometimes people get offended when I tell them that. That is not my intent to offend anyone or begrudge anybody's religion, because that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to express to you what I experienced.
I also recognize that there is something out there that isn't good.
Erkennen, dass es so etwas gibt wie das Nicht-Gute.
But this dualism of heaven and hell, God and the devil, well, I think these are the ideas you're talking about. Those ideas are pretty childish. If I believe appropriately, the more mature my faith becomes. When I manage to rescue my faith and transfer it to my adult life, then it will turn into a free belief that can think freely, also via denominational and religious dogmas. Faith is a crutch for this side of the world. It helps us to walk. For me, it's the Christian belief system, whether it is Catholic or Lutheran. Well, I believe these two denominations have so many common features and not many proper differences anyway. They never played a big role to me anyway. Faith is just a walking aid, and I won't need this walking aid anymore. This crutch.
What was shown to me when I died, like the idea of going to hell and suffering for all eternity, and oh, by the way, I love you. That didn't fit. A lot of the things just simply didn't fit, and it caused a great deal of torment. I didn't know something was wrong. It didn't add up.
I'm pious in my beliefs, but I am not religious. And I found that religion for me, and I'm only speaking for me, was too limiting. It was too confining a box for me to be in. I no longer needed a priest to have a connection to God. I could go directly to the source, and I do constantly. I'm in constant contact and communication, and it serves me well. So we all have to find our way and what feels right to us. And I think the most important thing is to trust what you know and what you believe, because nobody knows better for you than you, not even me. So most of us, give our power away in certain ways to other people and circumstances. And I'd like you to remember never to do that, because you are your own God self, and you do know better. So
I didn't even have to ask, because the question that was there in my mind, well, which one is the true church? It was already in his understanding that it was in my mind. And at the same time that I was feeling this question, I was in his place, seeing myself from his wisdom and knowledge and background. And the way I saw myself asking was like a little kid who goes up to someone with maybe some more wisdom or knowledge. And it was as if I were saying, so tell me, which kind of cheese is the moon made of? Is it Jack, Swiss, or cheddar? And it was, he didn't answer me with words or even with that telepathic communication. He smiled at me And he just kind of lowered his head in a way that I understood he was going to let me wait a while, whatever a while means, until I was ready to figure out what it was I really needed to ask.
When I was able to study all the teachings I studied, there was a point that I was learning things from Hinduism, Buddhism, teachings of Kabbalah, Vedanta, Christianity, Indian cultures of the Americas, and by the age of 16, I already knew that the core of all teachings was the same, and it was unconditional, pure love. And that we were confused with all the rituals, and we stay in the outside and knowing what was important, the core of things, love and unity. If you follow the path of love, you are in the right path.
And there are no churches there, not where I was. It wasn't about just one way, and it wasn't about doctrines and books, but just about a universal compassion and love for everything, for everyone. Animals, plants, birds, all of it. It's all together.
I had a friend who was a fundamentalist minister in Georgia who was raised in a very strict fundamentalist church. And he was absolutely convinced that only members of his church were going to heaven and everybody else would go to hell. And on the way to church one morning, he had a wreck in which it's amazing that he survived. But he had this experience of seeing everything he had ever done. He said what God was interested in was how I had learned to love. People often go into these experiences thinking that it's going to be one of judgment, that there's that God has been keeping a book with all your making marks against you for various kinds of infirmities or muffs in life. And so they go into this with the attitude that they're going to be judged. But what they come out seeing pretty quickly in this life review is not a matter of judgment. It's a matter of how have you learned? What did you learn from this? And how have you learned to love? And people say that in this situation, you can see that the answer is obvious because you're surrounded by a panorama of every single thing you've ever done. And this being sees it completely. And yet, whatever is in that panorama, this being loves you completely. After this, people are inspired to try to be good and loving to others. Still within the framework of human failings, that it's still difficult, but at least that vision of the importance of love inspires them to get busy to try to bring it into everyday reality.
But when they cross over, they themselves understand in that moment of clarity, they themselves understand that everything they did out of fear. They did because they didn't know any better. Now, if you imagine, if you have a child who you have been punishing because they have been not just reckless, but destructive and harmful to other people, harmful to their siblings, so you have had to reprimand them, punish them, scold them. Now imagine if one day, when the child comes to you and says, "Oh my God, I've had an awakening. I understand why I did those things and how stupid it was of me." Are you going to burn them in hell for all of eternity? Of course not.
and I judged myself as guilty and shameful. And it was everything that I'd ever done from the moment of my birth to intend and not intend to hurt. And I conceive, because I'm a Christian minister, I conceive of that as sin now. The pain that I gave to people. And meanwhile, as I was going through this experience of self-judgment, the voice was saying to me, I know you. I've always known you. You are my creature. I made you. I make you. I love you as you are. I have always loved you. I loved you into being. I love you with all the pain you caused, and I love you without it. I love all of you. And none of this is a surprise to me. I know this about you already. And because I felt shame at my actions, in comparison with the infinity of love, I judged myself guilty, and I was forgiven. Jesus talks about the kernel and the chaff gets burned off in the fire. Sort of like that. And then all of the pain was gone, and I was left with only love and beauty and joy and truth and hope and compassion, all one thing. And I got to bring with me into heaven all of the love that I'd ever given away and all of the love that was ever given to me. And that was the treasure of myself.
When you crawl out of your flesh, what is left is the love that you have.
You are deeply loved and cherished forever. You have nothing to fear. You will be taken care of. And nothing to fear is very, very critical, because I saw very much, in my view, how this was not a battle between good and evil, between light and darkness. In fact, there's plenty of evil and darkness in this world, but it's not a force that is against love and light of that infinitely powerful Creator. We simply serve as channels to bring that love and light into this world, and it displaces the darkness and evil. The darkness and evil are plenty real in this material realm, and you can also encounter them in those lower spiritual realms, such as I did in that earthworm eye view. The important thing to remember is when you know and fully know that you are a divine, eternal, spiritual being directly connected to that all-powerful creative deity, you have nothing to fear.
As I came to the light, I could see that it was a being, a person, that was emanating this light. The light was flowing from him. And as I got closer, I knew who this man was. And I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt, just like I would know a grandfather or a grandmother, I knew that he was Jesus Christ. And I began to rush to him. And I said to myself over and over as I was running, I'm home, I'm finally home, and I never ever want to leave you again, almost chastising him for having had to have this separation from him. But he just held his arms out as I ran into them, and he held me, and he loved me unconditionally. And there was a humorous nature about this man.
I stood up, I turned around, and there was Jesus. And I don't know if I ran to him or he came to me. I mean, all of a sudden we were there. He just smiled at me, and I felt all this emotion that he had for me. I finally felt like I was home. It was like I stepped into, finally I belonged. This is where I belonged. I was home.
Valerie had been a Christian for most of her life, but says she never believed that God really loved her.
In my heart of hearts, I did not believe that I was worthy of his love, because I always felt like I was never going to measure up to what I thought the Lord wanted from me. So when I felt his emotion, I felt how he felt about me, and the things that I thought about myself, like my flaws or my issues, He never even noticed. He just wants me. It wasn't anything that I did for him. It wasn't my performance, nothing. It was just me. I wasn't just loved by him, but he was in love with me. And I was his. That was it. I was done for. And I thought, but then realizing this is how he feels about his creation, those that he's created, whether they know him yet or not. This is how he feels.
Valerie says she felt like she was there for 1,000 years and experienced life and love like she never had on earth. Then, Jesus told her she had to go back with a message.
He said, you can stay if you want to. And I said, well, if I can stay, I'm staying with you. I'm going to stay with you. And he said, but your purpose isn't done. And he said, I want you to tell the people who I am, who I really am. Because I thought he was, religious. I thought he was mean. I thought he was, I didn't think he was, human.
But I tell you what, when you come back, we'll sit down. You can ask me all the questions that you ever will have. I'll answer for you. So I said, okay. He says, okay, it's time for you to go back. And I turned around. I'm sorry, but he put his arms around me. He put his arms around me. And it was a feeling that I can't explain. It was unconditional love, but it was words. I can't tell you the words. And I'm sorry, but I always act like this because I can feel it again. So, it changed my life.
And I'm in my bedroom in this state of awe. I was just in the state of amazing awe, and it was still lit up. And I turned to my side and I see white robes standing next to my bed. And then I looked up. Holy moly, that's Jesus. And he was looking at me with intense blue eyes that I've never seen anybody with with those blue eyes. And he said to me one sentence, and that was, but he didn't move his lips. I heard his voice, male's voice, in my head, or wherever I just heard it. Don't waste your life thinking you're not loved. And when he said the word your life, I felt this. It was palpable how precious my life was. And not just how precious my life was, but how precious everybody's life was, including that kid in Africa.
Now, is it possible that in this state, that because it was part of your background and your belief system, that it would be expected that, say, in your personal case, you would encounter Jesus, and for another person who had a different kind of religious experience, they might encounter the way God would be manifest in their religion? What is your response to that?
Yes. In fact, I asked about that. It was part of my questioning, you might say. I needed to know. And I learned there that if you, if you had another belief system, God would not shock you out of your belief system, but that you would ultimately, we all would come to know that God did exist and that Jesus existed as well. But, that we would all be drawn to that knowledge eventually.
I felt not only that I was loved unconditionally, it was like I just was loved just because I existed, no other reason. But I also felt unconditional love for everyone
and everything, even for people that may have hurt me during my life. All I felt for them was unconditional love and compassion, and a knowing that no matter what they did, even if they hurt me really badly, no matter what they did, they were still doing the best they knew how at the time. It was like I understood why they did what they did. So there was no, it's like that feeling of unconditional love is not even a feeling of forgiveness towards those that hurt you. It's beyond forgiveness. It's like, I understand why you did what you did, and therefore there's nothing to even forgive. Because when I understand you, to me, it means you haven't even done anything wrong. To forgive someone means to say you've done something wrong and I forgive you. So there's even a judgment there. There was like no judgment. It's like a knowing. It's almost like having walked a mile in their shoes. It's a knowing that if I was in your shoes, I would have done the same. So there's nothing to forgive. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of feeling of unconditional love. And in that realm, that was all I could feel for everyone, and that was what I felt that I was surrounded with.
I saw what a beautiful soul she is, how brave she is. I saw that she had been mistreated and abused, and I saw how all of the bad behavior and cruelty that I felt from her was purely because of, once again, purely because of her fear. And I found myself not only forgiving her, there actually, after seeing everything so clearly and seeing why she was the way she was and who she really was on a soul level, after seeing that, there wasn't even a need to forgive her. It was just a big, oh, I get it now. You know, like just total compassion and understanding for her, and love, total love for her. And on top of that, I admired her. So I went from feeling victimized and feeling like she was not a nice person and not a good person. I went from that to completely changing it and admiring her. And that was very powerful. And I've always remembered that now. So whenever I see someone behaving badly or being cruel or acting out of this or that fear, I look at them as fearful, and I see them as I try to see them as God sees them, which is the way God showed me what my stepmother was really like and why she was the way she was. So God knows everything we've been through, or God understands us into the tiniest details of our lives, knows everything about why we are the way we are, why we're grumpy, why we may have certain survival mechanisms that are malfunctioning, and why we're addicts, why we are having trouble in certain areas of our lives. God understands all of it. And if only we could see that, if only we could see everyone the way God sees them, I can't even imagine how that would change the world.
I felt this energy just wrap itself around me and move into me and become me. And just like with my grandmother, this energy let me see through its heart and through its eyes. And now I can call it God. At the time, going from atheism to having this experience, I couldn't use a word, but now I know that was God comforting me. And together, we moved to the baby. And that baby was in a cloud that contained thousands of clouds, and thousands of bubbles. And in each bubble was another event from my life. So we had the experience together of bobbing through the bubbles, and at the same time there was a linear sequence of the 32 years I had been here in this lifetime. And I kept hearing myself say, no wonder, no wonder. And that meant, no wonder you are the way you are. Look at the abuse you had as a child. And when I would think that, this energy would hold me tighter. And looking at it now, it was such a powerful experience that if that energy wasn't holding me, I don't think I could have survived. I think I just would have exploded. And together, what we re-experienced too was that my mother, who was the one that was very crazy and tormenting me, abusing me, I could feel and see and hear somehow all the abuse that she had had as a child. So there was like instant forgiveness because there was instant understanding.
En ik kreeg 2 zinnen mee. En de ene was: mensen hebben lief voor zover ze kunnen. Het lijkt een dooddoener, maar is het helemaal niet. En de tweede zin was: you don't need to go anywhere. En er zaten mensen om mijn bed heen en ze praten. En ik dacht, ze praten, maar ze zeggen niks. Wat ze zeggen is niks. Over wat ze zullen doen, wat ze gaan doen, wat ze gedaan hebben, wat ze niet gedaan hebben, wat ze zullen doen, wat ze niet zullen doen, hoe ze met vakantie gaan. En het was niks. Het had geen inhoud. En ik voelde me ongelooflijk alleen. En toen begon die zin van mensen hebben lief voor zover ze kunnen, begon aan de deur te kloppen. Dat mijn alleengevoel ook een signaal was dat ik meer van ze verwachtte. En dat ik moest aanvaarden dat mensen lief hebben voor zover ze kunnen. You don't need to go anywhere, dat betekende dat ik volledig ben. Ik ben vrijheid. Ik hoef het niet te veroveren. Niemand kan het van me afnemen. Ik ben het. En ik hoef ook nergens naartoe om die vrijheid terug te winnen. Langdurig therapie meegemaakt om de emotionele, dus de psychische schade van die geweldstraumata ook na het kamp, om daarmee om te leren gaan. Maar in essentie ligt onder al die traumata, daar ligt gewoon je bodem. En die zielenbodem, die kan niemand van je afnemen. Die vrijheid van die ziel kan niemand van je afnemen, ook een kamp niet. En elke keer word ik dus gewekt in mijn leven aan die allereerste oorsprong, die elke beperking te boven gaat. Maar ik ben ook mens genoeg om er vaak zo een beetje eronder te zitten en dan krijg ik weer een schop van oh ja, ik vergeet het weer. Dus zo gaat dat.
And the light welcomed me. The light absorbed me into the light. So I was part of the light. And once I was in the light, I knew everything the light knew. I knew all about the universe. I knew everything. About flowers, about plants, about asteroids, about suns, about novas, everything. I didn't have a question for the light. Why? Because I knew all the answers. I had nothing to ask.
That when I get out to the other end, there is, as if there are words to describe that this is even more amazing than what I already described, there is pure light. Pure light, love, truth, grace, peace, all consciousness, all knowingness. And having left the body way behind, and even the mind, the spirit starts to experience complete oneness with all that ever was, ever will be, and all that is, and complete understanding of all of it. Imagine such consciousness.
I felt connected to everything. I knew everything. It was like there wasn't anything outside of my awareness. I felt total clarity about everything, how everything worked, why it worked, what it was comprised of, what we were doing, why we were here, what it was all about. There was total clarity about everything and everyone.
And I began to know things that I didn't know before. It was being fed into me as if I were a receiving station. I had no thoughts of my own at all while this was going on. And what was being transmitted to me was that I was an immortal being, that I had always existed. I always would exist. I was eternal. I was indestructible. There's nothing that ever really could happen to me to wipe me off the face of the earth or any other place. And I knew that that was true. I didn't doubt anything that the light was giving me, because somewhere inside me I knew the light was, I didn't think, oh, the light is God. I didn't think that. I just felt the light was from God. I had feelings, not thoughts. And I knew that anything the light was giving me was the absolute truth. And I just kind of floated with this knowledge of my indestructibility, my eternalness for a little while, feeling that I was being cradled and loved beyond any belief system that had ever crossed my way.
And during my time there, I had a complete understanding of the divine order of the universe, how it could possibly be true that there is a God that is real and present today, knows each and every one of the billions of us on this planet individually, loves each and every one of us as though we're the only ones, and has a plan for each and every one of us and for the world that's one of hope.
It was like I had access to everything. And what struck me so strongly in my experience was being able to not just see that there was math and science in everything. It wasn't like, if a teacher gets up at the front and says, let me show you this math, or, let me teach you this. I was all of it. And I knew that while I was these things, this math and this science and this order that was in the universe, I knew that there was nowhere that it wasn't. And even if there's a tiny bug going across the room, I knew that that was within this math and science too, in this beautiful order. And so for me, it was beyond just beautiful, because my life before the experience, I struggled with looking out in the world and feeling like this really looks chaotic. I get that God's in charge and he gets to have the remote control to our lives and, pick what he wants. And then in the end, he'll explain why he did it. But it just seems so chaotic, and it doesn't seem like sensible enough that any being should be able to do it this way. And it frightened me, and it wasn't enough for me. It didn't appease me to see things this way. And so in my experience, to be within this order and see it, there was so much order, it was beyond anything I could imagine or ever put word to. It was incredibly beautiful and peaceful.
The universe runs according to a perfect plan. I knew that the plan was perfect, and everything that we think about as hard to understand or unfair or cruel, brutal, whatever, that was all really without meaning. And I know that's very difficult. But I knew this. I understood it. I comprehended it in a way that when I came back from the experience, I really couldn't comprehend anymore. But I understood that all of the things that we worry about and that concern us, we don't have to worry about at all. There is a perfect plan, and the plan is working itself out in its perfection.
And there were 3 messages that I received over and over again, and those were that we are unconditionally loved, that everything's always how it's supposed to be, and that everything will always be all right. And I knew instantly that if I didn't go back to my husband, my family, my friends, my 3 beautiful little babies, I knew that they'd be okay. I was shown the past, not just my past, but the past of everyone and everything. And I just had this knowing. I knew and I understood why everything happened. I understood that going forward in the future, there is a higher purpose and there is a reason for everything, good and bad.
You asked Jesus why there is pain in the world. What answer did you get?
Yes, I did. I learned that there's pain in the world because it is part of the natural growth process, that if we didn't learn pain, we would not learn joy or happiness. And so some of us that have probably the greater pain are actually the greater spirits capable of handling that additional growth period.
Does that go for horribly innocent suffering, like the Holocaust would come to mind?
Yes,
people
it does.
just victimized in pain.
Yes, it does. And I know that that is very difficult to understand at the earthly level. But if you could understand it from the spiritual sense, in that the spirit is so much stronger.
What about people who inflict pain? Are there negative spirits as well as positive ones, angels?
When you talk about the people that inflict pain, that is basically could be any one of us here in this room. And I learned that these people are just giving back what they have received in life. Often it is even actually genetically coded, some of the trends, I guess, that run through families.
And then suddenly a second block of knowledge descended upon me. And what I knew within that block of knowledge was that the world is perfect. And when I say world, I mean the totality, the allness, the everything. It's perfect. And I remember distinctly the very words that did come in, and it was that the world operates according to a perfect plan, and the plan is working itself out in its perfection. And I knew that that was true. I knew that all of this was true. And I lived with this feeling for a while, knowing that all the things that we think are cruel and horrible, and all the wars that are going on, knowing that somehow this is part of the perfect plan. It's part of what God is working out, and that I didn't personally have to worry about it. Although back on Earth you want to do something about it, and that's because we live here on Earth for the moment. But in reality, I didn't have to worry about a thing. It was all planned out and perfect.
And that was the teaching I got from the very beginning. Everything is going to be okay. And although I couldn't understand that many times, how this can be okay, that was always the teaching. Everything is happening for a reason, and everything is following a path of perfection. We just don't know this, because we're just living and understanding a very little piece of the picture. We don't know what anything is for. And later in my life, I learned that the purpose of this was the beings of light wanted to show me that home was not a place. Home was a state of being. Home, heaven, is here and now.
True learning happens in the body. And this is a big deal to me personally, because so much of my life was about wanting to escape the body and wanting that for other people. And I also grew up hearing, when you die, you get to, take off that glove, and you get to, be free. And so I kind of thought, like, here is the more negative, there the more positive. And with this understanding in this place that the body is, in a way, there, as hard as it is to see and understand, true learning happens within the body, because when we are in experience in this form, there's something that evolves within us, that can evolve within us at soul level, that makes the body an important part of the whole, that it isn't one's good and one's bad, but that the two work together in an important way. So that was very healing for me personally, to come to a better understanding of the body.
And the coin of that realm is love. That unconditional love that goes far beyond the phrase, far beyond those words. And of course, so many who have had near-death experiences and shared death experiences and other similarly spiritually transformative experiences know exactly what that's all about, that unconditional love. And the reason it's so important for all of us to get is because we're here in Soul School to learn those lessons of that love. And what we find is that that unconditional love has infinite power to heal. And I came from my journey to see that the hardships and difficulties in this life, and I promise you as a neurosurgeon, as a doctor, that very much includes illness and injury. They are gifts. They are opportunity for growth of our souls. We are all here as members of soul groups to do this growing. And when I talk about soul mates, I'm not just talking about that love of your life. I also came to see that often those who I'd seen before my coma as my nemesis, as someone who was in my way, preventing me from getting something I wanted in this life, often is a very near and dear soul mate. And I came to see the power of that love, that unconditional love, to heal. It heals the individual, it heals the soul group, it heals all of humanity, it heals life all around this world, and it heals consciousness throughout this universe.
I remembered that my soul chose to come to Earth. I remembered where I was before I was born. I remembered that all of our souls choose to come here, that this is a wonderful university, that we're not here by random accident, we're not here as victims, that we come here to choose, to study, to learn, and to grow. And that on some level, this is like a wonderful theater. It's like a big university, we all play our part, and when our time to go comes, we leave.
As a parent, I find it would be very hard for me to leave my children. How did you handle it?
I felt the same way, because I had 7 children that I deeply loved, and my husband as well. But when I left the hospital and went to see my children and my husband, I wondered why I didn't have that feeling of despair in leaving them. But I could see into each of their lives, and I knew that they were here on earth with their own agenda, and that it would be okay that whatever I was needed for in their lives had been taken care of. It was done.
Our responsibility is not to know the answer and to make that judgment of whether something is worth it or not. But our responsibility is to trust and to say, yes, God's will be done. And trust that there is beauty that will come of all things. And that there is hope in the plan for each person's life.
It became very clear to me that suffering in this life can very much be a gift. Not necessarily a gift, it's a catalyst, and a catalyst is neutral. But suffering gives us the opportunity to grow spiritually. And if our true reality is spiritual and not physical, and if our physical suffering results in the development of our spiritual being and spiritual qualities, then it can indeed be a gift. Because if you think about it, there's no moment that we can be courageous without the existence of pain and danger. There's no way that we can truly show compassion in this realm of existence unless, unfortunately, someone else may be suffering. There's no way that we can truly have patience, that spiritual quality of patience, and endure unless things are not going according to how we may desire. And so, if
as a result of our physical suffering, we can develop these eternal, these essential, these everlasting, these non-ephemeral qualities that are going to last beyond our mere 70 years of life, into the next realm, then we are creating our own spiritual being that we're going to take with us. And that is the most glorious of achievements that we can possibly have. So suffering from that perspective gives us the opportunity to exhibit spiritual qualities and can indeed be a gift, not that one brings it on.
In life, everything that happens to us, there's a gift in it, even if we can't imagine what it could be. You've heard many people who've had cancer talk about what a gift it was for them, because they learned about loving themselves. They learned about opening their hearts and allowing people to do for them. They learned to receive.
The thing about life, what I learned, is that everything about life is a gift, even the challenges. We're here to experience life, so we're here to even experience the challenges. When I had cancer, I never would have thought that was a gift. I suffered a lot, terribly, and if anybody told me that was a gift, I would have thought it was absolute nonsense because I was suffering so much. But today, I know that was the biggest gift that life could ever have given me, because I wouldn't be standing here today in beautiful Sedona, Arizona, if that hadn't happened to me. Thank you. Everything in life is a gift in the end. And if it doesn't feel like a gift right now, it means you haven't reached the end yet.
Do you have any idea why you experienced the abuse that you did? Why did you experience that in this lifetime?
Well, I'm not sure. It was something obviously between me and my mother. And the only way I see any meaning out of it now is that I've become a psychotherapist and I work with people that were traumatized, abused, and neglected as children. And I understand their path because I've walked in the same shoes. So for me, the curse has become the gift because I'm using my experiences and my healing to help other people heal.
Situations were very hard at home. My parents were at the verge of divorcing. Things were going hard at home. It's like when all the challenges come together. I guess this is the moment where these two very deep questions knock the door of my life. I ask, when did we stop being one with the whole? And how is it possible to forget who we truly are? I kept asking the beings of light, why me? Why this is happening to me? And it's when they answered to me, in 20 years you will understand. What? 20 years? Imagine, and even at that age, 20 years is like forever and a day. And they say someday you will pass these teachings to others. No. At that moment of my life, I was not interested. I want to become a scientist. I'm not interested. I'm not teaching this to anyone. I asked the beings of light just to give me a break, pretty much. I wanted to be like everyone else. And this is the compassion of the universe. We're not forced. I mean, at that moment, it was like, okay, you're not going to see us or hear us for a while. When you are ready, it will happen.
I asked many questions. For instance, why are we here? And I was told pretty much we banged on the door for this life. Our souls, it sounds so philosophical, but our souls, or whatever you want to call it, insisted on being born. And that it was something we really wanted a lot.
And there is no judgment. I'm going to move from this, and I'll tell you, when we pass from this life,
we're going to be embraced by loving arms and simply asked, what did you learn? Tell me about what you learned in your experience. What was it like to be like that? What was it like to be you? What was it like to have this or not have that? And it's all going to be a collective oneness of, wow, look what we learned. Look what we created. Look at the uniqueness. And we'll realize we always were one. We always were connected. It was just our inability to embrace it and realize it that held us back.
I thought that life was happening to me. I thought that everything that was going wrong or not going right was because of God was doing it to me, life was doing it to me. I hadn't a clue that I had any power in all of that. I didn't know that we are an extension of God. I grew up believing and being taught that we are created in the image and likeness of God. Well, I'm here to tell you it's a hell of a lot bigger than that. We are an extension of the God source here on earth. We were created so that the Creator could experience everything that we experience. We were created out of love. And the Creator's always got our back. Spirit's always got our back. And all is well, no matter what it looks like. All is well.
There's a point in your life that life shakes you so hard that you only have two choices. There's only two paths. The path of suffering or the path of the light. The path of suffering is like a cul-de-sac. You go to the end of this and there's nowhere to go. Or it's like when you're in a car and you turn it on, you press the gas, but you never put the car in drive, you don't go anywhere. You're spending all your gas. You're spending all your energy. You're circling there. Nothing is happening. Until you realize, I had enough of this. At that point, when sometimes I am just so trapped in things I don't understand, I said, God, help me see, because I cannot see. But I know that behind this challenge, there is a teaching. There is a purpose. And the very next day, I woke up with the answer I needed. And I said to people, sometimes it are the most simple answers. The answer was, yeah, you need help, go look for a psychologist. I said, yeah. And I had it clear. It was not just as, oh, I may do it. No, it was clear. I was the one that said to him, why me again? This question that always was resurfacing, and why me? Why this is happening to me? And it's when I got the most amazing answer. And he said, why not? What? For me, this was like the switch I needed at that moment. The light I turned off was on now. Because at that moment, he started to also say, look, thanks to this, you have done this. Thanks to this, you have done that. Thanks to this and this. And I was able to connect all the knots. And now it's like all my neurons, everything was like accelerating and everything was connecting. And this was the first time in my life I put myself at the cause of everything and not at the effect. And I started to see purpose in absolutely everything. At that moment, I also realized that none of that had happened was here anymore. It was in my mind, and I could decide what to do with it. Wow, I can grab all this and just make a decision to start fresh. The true feelings of sense of forgiveness happened. It was the realization that there was nothing to forgive, because nothing had ever been done to me to hurt me. It's been done for me to bring me to wake up.
I understood also that we are amazing, magnificent, powerful beings, because I felt my energy, my essence was so huge and powerful and amazing, powerful beyond my imagination, beyond anything I could ever have known before.
I used to live in a fear that the world was going to end or God was going to come and fix it. Now I'm a firm believer that it's up to us, that we're divine, powerful beings, and that if we can embrace that love that is within each of us by loving ourselves and then loving others, that's the ripple effect. That's what creates heaven right here. You know, there's nowhere to go or anything to be. It's to really embrace and love each other here, and suddenly that beautiful place becomes the ground under our own feet.
Everything that is happening is just encouraging us and supporting us to step into all of who we are. And it's like the whole universe is just there saying, come on, you can do it.
And I stand in front of you now going, you know, the world's a pretty scary place right now. It's a really scary place right now. But there is also so much good. There is so much hope that if we can learn to come together and work with each other and we promote that which we know to be truth. And the one thing that we can hang our hat on is that we are all divine love and wisdom.
So really the only job that you have right now is to raise your frequency. Because when enough people have stepped into the connection to their own divine essence, it's like a net over the earth. As each person steps into the truth of who they are, then they become a light on the net. And when there are enough lights, the whole earth will shift.
I was immediately returned to my life review, where I had been shown the truth in God's promise that beauty comes of all things, eventually. And I was reminded that it is always a matter of trust, trusting God's promises to us.
I mean, yeah, if it's so good there, why be here? I deal with a lot of people who struggle with suicide or who have lost children to suicide, and I have no judgment of that. There were many times during my struggles that I thought I'd rather just go. Of course, I had a son here that was keeping me pretty grounded. But I think this is the big game. It's like we can't experience what we want to experience when everything's light and beauty and peace. It's almost like we wanted to have the opposite. We wanted to experience what we're not so we could finally embrace what we truly are. I'll go back to my old football days where they would draw it on the chalkboard and all the X's and O's and everything looked perfect, and yet you never knew until you got on the field and smelled the grass and had someone hit into you that, you know, what it was like. And I believe life is like that. We wanted to come and have the experience because our soul would expand. And while we're here, we just think, oh my gosh, I can't do this. I mean, this is too hard. But our higher self, our higher knowledge thinks, yeah, but that's why you came. I mean, it's easy for me to sit in a beautiful house and say life is good. And there's people that suffer, struggling. I mean, I'm working with some folks that work with human trafficking. I mean, kids being taken and put into the sex trade or whatever else. There are things in the world that are heart-wrenching. And so how do we look at those and say it's all in divine order? How does this make sense? I embrace it as a perfect opportunity to be love. How can I shine light in dark places? How can I embrace things and make a difference? And I realize I'm just one. I'm just one guy, but gosh, can I make life better for somebody today? Can I do something for someone? And by doing it for the one, you're doing it for the all. Even when I raise my own vibration, if I can go meditate for a minute and get at peace or forgive, you know, something, even if it's forgiving myself, I forgive others very easily. The hard one to forgive for me is myself. That ripples out. It ripples out and affects the consciousness of all of humanity, but it comes down to choice. We live in fear. We're so conditioned with judgment or religion or even our parents or whoever said, well, you're a bad boy, you don't deserve that, that's not coming. Well, you've got to earn that, you know. I mean, all these things that we have conditioned in our mind when in reality we are deserving. We are worthy, always. We're of great worth. If I can do something that makes a difference in the world with the catastrophe that happened, then that makes it worth it. Then that makes it in some ways okay, or at least a little bit better. I've found a key for me, and it's if I can take only 10 minutes a day. I mean, I would rather take an hour, but even 10 minutes to be still. To be still and just reconnect. Like always be connected. Just remember that connection. Remember who I am. Remember that everything's in divine order, and let go of the fear. Let go of the contention. Let go of that doubt that there's not enough. You know, we live in such fear that there's not enough. There's not enough money. There's not enough food. There's not enough time. There's not enough love. And yet if we can let go of that and realize there is enough. And I think the key for me was realizing that I'm enough. I'm enough. I mean, I limp around on one leg and I do the best I can, but I am enough by simply being me, by simply showing up in light, in love, and loving the people around me and taking care of those around me. And when I say taking care of, just energetically, you know, I will probably never make enough money. You know, I'll probably never have. But then again, what's money? It's just energy. I've had lots of money and I've had nothing. And it didn't make me any happier one way or the other. You know, I mean, there's always that, well, I want more money, or I need to make more of this, or if I only had more money, I could get that. They're just things. You know, they're just things.
I noticed that there appeared in my room 3 men that were in a soft glow about them. They stood about 2 feet above the floor, and they explained to me that they were my guardian angels, and that they had always been with me throughout all my time here on earth.
So what help do we have?
I learned that we all have guardian angels. As a matter of fact, I had 8. Now I thought 8. And I thought, am I a particularly tough case? And no, I am not. We all have many guardian angels that are around us, and not constantly. They're imposing, but you may have 2 or 3 at one time, and during your deeper, darkest hours, you may have 8 or more. And they do not interfere with your free will, but they try to encourage you to do the right things, and always leading you and directing you towards the right things in your path.
Many people ask me about free will and destiny. They ask me which is true or which is the case. Is it our free will or is it our destiny that's actually at work? Now, in actuality, we all come here with a calling, with a higher calling, all of us. And we can say that is our destiny, but we have the free will as to whether to follow our higher calling or not. There's always the free will as to whether we follow. So our destiny is actually the intention we came here with, the calling, the purpose, but we don't always have to follow it. So how do we reach our higher calling? How do we attain what we came here to achieve? We do that always by just being authentic, being who we are. We do that about being fearless about being who we are, instead of always trying to please other people. Our fear of disappointing other people is what takes us away from our higher calling. It's also what takes us away from why we came here. So our destiny is not set in stone. Our destiny is really our highest potential. We came here with the intention of achieving our highest potential. So if we really want to achieve our highest potential, our only work is to shine our light as bright as we can. Our only work is to find love. It's to feed ourselves love and to be love, because the more love we feel, the more love we share, the more we're moving away from fear. We have the free will to go in the direction of fear. We have the free will to make ourselves small and dim our lights. And so this is where free will comes in. Do we follow our destiny, or do we follow our lower self and follow fear? That's always our choice.
That part of my mission is to share with people that we are so loved. That's all there is. We are so loved. The judgment and punishment are things that humans do. We judge ourselves, we judge each other, we punish ourselves, we punish each other. God doesn't do that. God just loves us, no matter what we do. God knows how hard it is here. God admires us for being willing to come here and give it a go. We have so much tremendous support, we just can't see it. But if you tune in, you can feel all the love around you all the time. Remember to ask for help, because it is always there. It is always there. But you have to ask, because they're not going to interfere with us, because we have free will. So it's all about love. And sometimes it's really hard to be loving in the world that we've created. But every little bit that we can try to do, every little bit of trying to create heaven on earth is so important and has such a ripple effect. We are all magnificent, divine, powerful creators, and we need to step into that and recognize it and be love.
I think something that's important to know is that we came in as creators. We had an agenda, and the sooner we get to working on that, the more fulfilled we're going to be. And living life from your own creation, knowing that you can, even if you don't know how, trusting that leap of faith to create. Just go for those feelings and stop paying attention to the negative things around you that are burdensome to you. Pay attention to your heart and the things that you are wanting, the joy, the feeling, the love, the connection to creatures and people and all things wonderful. Pay attention to the things that give you joy, not to the things that you're afraid of and that you worry about. Mm-hmm. Trust in life.
Yeah. He was dying. She was sitting at his bedside, holding his hand. He was asleep. And at one point he opened his eyes and he looked at her very alert and he said, "You know what? It's all about love, isn't it?" And it has to come like that. You can't tell people that. You can't preach it to them. In my own experience, it was that kind of a thing. I was very depressed. I was a very unhappy young person. I just felt that nothing was going to happen. I had spent my life trying to please other people, and no matter how hard I tried, I wasn't able to please them. They were always critical. And then I had this sudden insight that said, you know, you've got to stop trying to please other people, because even if you do, it's not you that they're going to accept. They're accepting false face that you're putting on, and that's not going to make you happy. Wouldn't you be better off just being who you really are? And then if people don't like you, they don't like you, but the people who do like you really like you. We spend so much of our lives reacting to this terrorizing threat of what will people think. But pleasing somebody by being false is not love. And demanding that somebody behave a certain way so you would love them, that's not love either. Love is being who you are and accepting other people for who they are.
Because when you don't love yourself, you don't allow yourself to express who you are. When you don't love yourself, you believe that everybody else is better than you. Everybody else is more important than you. Everybody else's message is better than yours. That was me. That was who I am. I would make myself small so others could be big. I would dim my light so others could shine. That was me. I would say yes when I meant no. It was easier to disappoint myself than it was to disappoint other people. When you love yourself and you fill yourself up, you have a lot more to give other people, because you cannot give people what you yourself don't have. When you give and give and give, but you're empty inside, and you just keep giving because maybe for some reason you've learned that it's selfish to love yourself, it's selfish to give yourself, and it's selfless to give. You've got to be loving, you've got to keep being generous with your love and doing for other people, and you keep doing and doing and doing, and then imagine that you become drained, which is very common, which is what I did. I became drained to the point I got cancer. Now imagine you start to become drained and tired of giving, and you realize that people aren't giving back to you. And now you feeling a little bit needy, like you need some support, but it's not coming back to you. What do you feel? You feel resentment towards the people you've been giving and giving who aren't giving back to you. And when you feel resentment for them, what happens is that it makes your love for them conditional. And that is the start of a dysfunctional relationship. And that's why we have so many relationships that are breaking down. Now, you imagine if you allow yourself to fulfill yourself, you allow yourself to love yourself enough that you allow yourself to find your joy. Now, people who love themselves, who allow themselves to find their joy and feel joyful about life, are the most fun and generous people to be around. And when you love yourself to the point where you are feeling fulfilled, self-actualized, then the love that comes from you is unconditional, because you don't need anything back from anybody. The other interesting thing you'll find that happens when you learn to love yourself is that you will find that other people love you more when you love yourself more. You will also find that other people respect you as much as you respect yourself. Other people value you as much as you value yourself. And the more that you love yourself, the more love you have to give, and also you'll find the more other people love you. There's really no downside, and I cannot figure out why this is such a huge secret. I just can't figure, because there's no downside. People say that it's egotistical to love yourself. No, the ones who are the most egotistical or narcissistic are the ones who don't love themselves, and they're overcompensating. It's the other way around. The people who love themselves are the most generous and joyful people to be around. And people have asked me, well, how much love for self is too much? There's no such thing as too much. Our planet suffers from too little self-love. And when we love ourselves, we stop judging ourselves so harshly. We become kinder to ourselves. And when you are kinder to yourself, you're kinder to other people. When you stop judging yourself, you stop judging other people. People who we see as very critical, judgmental, they're actually even more critical and judgmental inwardly towards themselves. What you are inside is what you express outside. So the more you love yourself inside, the more you'll show that outside. So that is really the number one key thing. The second thing that I learned, which is really important, is to live your life fearlessly. Be yourself fearlessly. It's really important to be fearless. And what do I mean by fearless? I mean that stop fearing things like what other people think of you. Most people don't really care. I used to worry so much about what people thought of me. I was, as I said, a people pleaser. So I feared everything. I feared what people thought of me. I feared not being good enough. I feared failing. I used to treat myself like a doormat. I would put myself last. I would always put other people ahead of me. When I would do things for people, I didn't do it from a place of love because I didn't do it because I wanted to do it for them. I did it because I feared what they would think of me if I didn't do it. So every choice, every decision I made came from a place of fear, not from a place of love.
Oh, and that's right. The other thing I was told was that because it's not my time, there's no cheating. The interpretation is no suicide. You are cheating if you do that. He didn't say it was a sin or a crime. I'm not saying that I know if it is or it isn't because I don't. But he said no cheating. What about that part? You cannot go before it's your time or it's cheating. I don't know why he said that, but he did. So no suicide.
Yeah, one thing I can tell you is that suicide won't work. If you're thinking about that, you can just scratch that one off the list because it's not going to do what you think it's going to do. And I'm not exactly sure what that means. Again, I'm no guru, but I know that was one of the things that I was shown is that no, you're not going. There's no short way around. You're not going to die until you fulfill your purpose.
The world is like God's garden, and God made you and everyone else to bloom in that garden and to be beautiful. And God made every one of you unique and special to be beautiful in your own way.
I've heard this said all weekend, and I thought it was really unique. It said, "This is not your time, you must return." Man, I said, no way. And I argued, and I perceived this light to be God. So I argued with God. And I said, no, I've got a family here I never knew. I'm feeling loved like I've never felt I was loved. I mean, I never knew when we're walking this life that we're loved. I mean, we are loved. I never knew that. And I didn't want to go back to that separation. I didn't want to go back to that body. And that body I knew was still in the ocean, being tumbled and tossed, was very broken, and was just cold. It was not something I wanted. Cold and confining. I didn't want to go back to that. I thought I presented a pretty good case. You can see I'm here. The light spoke one more time and said, no, you must return. You have a purpose. Oh man, that word purpose just, went into my being. And when you're in that light, you're connected to this consciousness that's so much more than just yourself. You're connected, to me it felt like you're connected to all the souls that ever were and all the souls that ever will be. And so you have this immense knowing. And I understood that purpose. And all the time, I'm thinking, God, I was in that light, and I understood this purpose. Purpose. Now I'm here. What is this purpose?
And then I ask him, well, since I can't stay, since I have to go back, can you tell me what everything is all about? Everything, the whole of creation, what is it all about? And he did tell me, and I'm sorry to tell you, I can't tell you. He told me, and it was so simple, it wasn't more than 3 or 4 sentences. I comprehended that totally. And I said, can I take all this back with me? Since I can't stay, can I take everything that I have learned back? Because there are so many people I want to tell this to. And he said, you may take everything back with you except the answer to the last question. And that you aren't going to be able to remember. And of course, that was the one about what is it all about.
How do I find my purpose in life? I have a very simple solution. As I told you, I'm a simple person. And so I like very simple solutions. Your only purpose is to be yourself. That's all. And all you have to do is be as you can be. Shine your light as brightly as you can, and your purpose will unfold before you. Just allow life to unfold before you. And it's that simple. And it's much more important to be yourself than it is to even be positive.
I think that I do know what he was telling me, even though I can't, recall the actual 2 or 3 sentences. I know that it has to do with love, and I believe that it has to do with what I was enabled to see when he said, "What is in your heart?" And I looked inside myself and saw that I was perfect love. Now, that doesn't apply to just me. That applies to all human beings. That is what we are. That is our core. This perfection, this love, this Godness. I believe that what it's all about is the world will keep turning, and we will have all these experiences, and it will go on forever and ever and ever as we learn to bring that into our consciousness and have it remain there all the time. Our connection with God just there, not somewhere in our unconscious, but consciously aware all the time of who we really are. I think that's what the journey is.
What is your mission? What were you told your mission
I don't
is?
know. We all have missions. We're all not to know what they are, because I was told that if I knew what my mission was, I would hurry up, rush out, and complete it so that I could get back.
It's pretty easy for me, because it popped into my head like almost the moment that the light absorbed me. It was to experience unconditional love, to love unconditionally, and to experience accepting unconditional love from other people. So, and by unconditional love, I truly, unconditional love to me means I'm loving you without expectation or exception. It makes no difference what you do to me. It makes no difference what happens. If I truly love you unconditionally.
The Christ asked me, he said, "What did you learn from seeing all of these faces?" And I said to him that love was the best choice. And he said, "You're right." And I saw how I had to be careful how I treated people.
What was important were the choices that I made. And what was more important than just the choices that I made were my motivations and my intents, and really the state of my heart in doing any single action. And I realized in this, because I experienced sort of in a holographic awareness that was rather instantaneous, how every action that one takes is like a stone cast in the water, and if it's loving, that stone is cast in the water, and the loving action goes out and touches the first person that it's intended for, and then it touches another person, and then it touches another person, because that person interacts with other people, and so on and so on. And every action has a reverberating effect upon every single one of us on the face of this planet. So if I had committed a loving action, it was like love upon light. A purely loving action was the most wonderful thing that I could ever have achieved in my life. This had more meaning than to have been a Rockefeller or President of the United States, or to have been you know, a great scientist and to have invented something just incredible. If I had committed a truly pure and loving action, it had reverberated throughout the stuff of every individual on that planet, and I felt that action reverberating through them and through myself. And I felt it in a way that is beyond what we can even feel ourselves on this plane of existence.
And on the way toward the light, my actions came into my mind. Well, also my life. And I was given the opportunity to deal with my life. Or, better still, I had to address issues involving my life, and interestingly, all the things I was focused on in my life. I was an entrepreneur, and I had created a very successful enterprise in which I had invested a lot of time and energy. I also defined myself by how successful this enterprise had become, and how young I was when I had founded it, how many jobs I had generated, how valuable this enterprise was, and so on. But amazingly enough, all these things were entirely irrelevant in the light of these last few minutes before my possible death. But the questions I asked myself at that time were, how did I lead my life? What kind of employer was I? And what kind of colleague? What kind of father was I for my 3 children who were living at that time? By the way, I now have 6 children. So how was my conduct toward my siblings and my friends and my parents and so on?
It doesn't matter how successful you've been, how much money you've made, how many kids you've had, you know, what kind of a name you've made for yourself. What matters is, did I touch people? Did I allow them to touch me? Was I living a life of emotional well-being? You know, was I celebrating myself? Was I proud of me? You know, none of us get enough kudos in life. From our parents, none of us got loved the way we wanted to be loved. And that's the way it was set up. But we have the ability to love ourselves and make up the difference. And that's part of what our job is, you know, to be the highest vision of ourselves that we can be. Imagine what the world would be like if we were carrying that energy, as opposed to the insecure little people that we become. There wouldn't be wars. There wouldn't be people living without basic necessities. There wouldn't be strife. There would be love. There would be support. There would be passion in a good way. And that's what we're working towards, isn't it? To be the best and highest form of ourselves.
The purpose of life is, or to give our lives purpose, you know, to give our lives the purpose of life. The meaning in life is to give your life meaning. And what is that meaning? What is truly meaningful, you know? Is it the physical accumulation of things and awards and, you know, distinctions and whatnot? Or is it truly meaningful to serve humankind and to grow spiritually? I think that's really what we're here for.
And in that light, some of us are given a choice to come back and some are not. Some are spoken to and some are not. The stories and the details are all different, and the essential core learning and truth is similar. But in my case, I was spoken to by a voice I heard really well. And by the way, every time everyone's spoken to in the light by a voice is exactly the voice they need to hear, in exactly the language and exactly the tone that we need to hear. And I heard this voice say, Lewis, you are called here to have this conversation and to be sent back because you're not doing your work. In response to which I said, I surrender, take me, I'm yours, I will do your work. I must have been imagining I was being called to be a missionary of sorts. And I was told immediately, no, Lewis, it's not my work you need to do. It's your work. It's your work. It's your work. It's your work. We each are doing our own work, and I got it very clearly. It's your work you need to do, Lewis. Great. Tell me, what is my work? Here I was in a place where, since all truth is known, I expected the source of all truth to be able to make it easier for me. Didn't happen. Until I went deeper and got that in addition to the words that we're all one under God, I was also given the words that, well, noblesse oblige, you have more than others, so give back. And I went deeper and realized that with those gifts, I had created a feeling of a betterment, and that I had to help others who didn't have as much. And yet I started to discover loneliness, that even though I was told we're all one under God, my experience was, well, we may all be one under God, but somehow I and my tribe am better than you and your tribe. Woo. And the gap that created in me between my spirit and yours was so deep that I didn't know how to bridge it. So I was told, just like Amadeus was just like Mozart was in the movie Amadeus, when that perfect note was hit, there it is. I was told, there it is, Lewis, there's your work. And I was sent back down without any knowledge about how my life would change. And what happened was doors started to open. Another learning from another weakness of thinking that I could control what doors I wanted to open became that doors opened on their own and others closed on their own. And if I could just notice that, if each of us could just notice that, and then move through the doors that open and then use whatever skills we're given in this body and this life experiences to help co-create with the universe.
I think that there's a basic purpose that perhaps we all have. And this basic purpose is to remember that we're more than this physical form, and to remember that there's inspiration from that other realm, and to remember that this life is very short and that love is all that matters. If we do something with love, not are we loved, but do we add love to this world? Do we make someone's life better by doing something kind, by smiling at them, by helping them in some way, by being a support in their life, by helping others feel like they're part of a community, that they matter, that they have inspiration to move their own lives forward. If we can inspire people in some way to do that, then we're helping. But what is our purpose? When you see someone really on fire and just like in the zone, whether they're an athlete or whether they are creating a new business or whether they're excited about having a child or whether whatever it is that this person is really on fire about, then their soul must want that on some level. There's something that's pushing them forward. So don't overthink it. People go to a psychic or they go to someone and they say, what's my soul purpose? It's like, well, it's going to unfold for you. And you can find this more through meditation. So I believe that our higher self can look back and give us a little bit of a hint of what to do. And many times it's just to express the best version of yourself, maybe to transcend your own wounds or your ego at times, to go, you know what, I'm going to be calm in this situation. I'm going to be aware. I'm not going to react in a way that's going to cause pain to anyone. I'm going to remind them of their connection to something beyond themselves and my connection to something beyond myself. And we're going to be our highest and best selves in this moment. And when you're able to do that in times of difficulty, then you feel like, oh, I've touched my purpose. You know, I'm learning, I'm growing. So perhaps our souls are really on a mission here to remember who we are, to remember that we're light, to remember that we're love, to shine the light of who you are. And sometimes that light, it doesn't even have to be religious. It can just be a passion for music or for art or for film or for running or anything. You know, that if you have passion for life, then somehow you're connected to a light that's greater than yourself. And one of the things I do to stay motivated in my own life is I think about the end of my life, that future life review, and I think, what do I want to accomplish, and am I working towards that? And am I going to be excited about what I've done right now when I'm at the end of my life? And anytime I'm doing something to help others, because I know it's not about me. It's about the person watching this who is in hospice or just lost a kid or who is dying or is hurting. And if my message helps someone feel more at peace or feel more connected to nature or more connected to this idea that we go on and there's so much more magic out there than you could ever dream of, then I've helped people live a better life. So one of the things all people can do is think, this life goes by so quickly. What is it I'm doing right now in the middle of my life that's going to make me happy when I look back?
One thing that is fascinating is that all of the patients who go through this tell us that there is one thing that comes up to them as the most important feature in their life in these reviews. They say that it doesn't have anything to do with earthly success. No one asks them about their financial well-being or how much power they've had or any of these other things that our society suggests that we should be paying so much attention to. Every single person has told me that what they were faced with there was the question of how they had learned to love and whether they had put this love into practice in their lives.
He said, love the person that you're with. And I said, okay, great, I'll do that. No problem. What do you want me to do? He said, that I just told you what I want you to do, love the person you're with. And I said, yeah, but after I do that, then what do you really want me to do? And he said, no, that is what I want you to do, is love the person you're with. And I said, well, that's, that's simple enough. That's easy. I'll do that. And he said, oh, really? Well, that's what I want you to do. And he said, that's enough. And I said, how is it enough? And he said, if you do that, he said, you'll change the world.
That's what it's all about there. Jesus said to me that our purpose for being here on this earth is to learn to love, and that is one of the most important things, that if we love one another, everything else will be okay.
I was told very clearly what our purpose is, and your purpose is to love. It's that simple. Hard to pull off cleanly, but you are here to love. And I'm not just talking about the warm fuzzies. Most people, when you say the word love, they think warm fuzzies. Love is a far more multi-dimensional, complex thing than just the warm fuzzies. There, it's very obvious. Everything is made out of love. Made out of it. Like, this is love. This is an expression of God's love. And if you don't like the word God, use whatever word you want.
The world we live in right now, I was told, is like a classroom to learn to love. Not only ourselves, but to learn to love others as unconditionally as God loves us. Now that might seem to be a very simple thing. You think, okay, I can love. I love inside, I can love other people. That's not easy. Think about the people in your life. Are they easy to love? Heck no. I can tell you, my own children sometimes are difficult to love, right? They will present some of the greatest challenges on earth for you. The family that are right there in your unique little ripple will teach you the most in this life. And that saying that says, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Absolutely. And you know that that is true in your life as well. The teacher always appears when you are ready. And it's usually a challenging person. Someone that's just going to make you grit your teeth for shudder every time you're around them. You pass the test when you love them anyway. That doesn't mean to be a doormat. It doesn't mean that you lay down and let other people walk on you or scrape their feet on you. What that means is, because you can distance yourself from them, but what it means is you look into their soul and you see who they are. God's creation. You hate the deeds, but you do not hate the sinner. You've heard that expression.
I personally have no big plan other than to be loving. The only fly in the ointment is that I thought it was going to be easy, and it turns out to be the hardest thing that I've ever done. Because it sounds so simple, but it's really difficult. It's easy. It's like easy for me to love my mother because she was a really nice woman and she was a very loving woman. So not hard to love someone who's really good and really loving. But what do you do with someone who's difficult or actually really nasty? I mean, those are hard people to love. And what does it mean to love someone? I mean, sometimes to love someone means you need to incarcerate them. Yeah. And that's not like a lot of fun. Sometimes loving someone means you have to put as much distance between them and you as possible and tell them to never call you. You know, that's not a lot of fun. I mean, loving people sounds so simple, but it's very difficult.
I mean, there's this whole great big universe. Universe. I love that because una means one and verse means song. There's this one big song, and each and every one of us have a part to play in that, a part to sing, and I sing at a tone that's far different than yours, and every tone comes together in the perfect melody, the perfect harmony, and it's already happening. We don't see it because we see ourselves as separate, but if we realized and stepped into the oneness that we already are and sang our song so brightly and shined as we do, it's like the stars. Everyone has a different twinkle, but when you look at that Milky Way and that galaxy, you say, wow, look how beautiful it is collectively. Look how beautiful the stars are individually. And that's how we are. We're already that. There's nothing to become.
That by my being, I simply was expressing absolute love and connectedness and unity and harmony with all of existence. And I was adding my particular and absolutely unique note to this grand song of life that reverberated throughout all existence.
So go in the direction of your joy and bliss. If you don't like something, move in the direction of something that gives you joy and happiness. Tell someone that you appreciate them, that gratitude amplifies your life and anger and hatred dampens your own light. So part of my message is reminding people to turn on their lights. So if you are listening to this, turn on your own light and find something in this world that gives you excitement and happiness and go in that direction.
And as we're reviewing a specific instance, let's say it was one in which I got really, really angry and upset because something that happened somebody did something to me that really, really made me angry. And the life would say to me, well, look, wasn't that really a waste of energy? You were so angry for something that in the long run doesn't make any difference. Because in the long run, both you and the person that you're really angry with are going to be in the light anyway. You're just experiencing something that both of you chose to experience. Wow. So as we view all those things, we started to laugh at how serious I was taking life. Now, come on, Andy, really now.
And in that life review, I was able to feel for myself the way we would feel for our own children. And I had this compassion for myself where I wanted for myself to be happier and to do better, not as in, get the higher grade, but just to be happier, that kind of better. Like, have fun, lighten up, it's okay, and things like that.
I was still looking for joy and peace out there somewhere. Who can bring this to me? Tanya, if she could just love me enough to make me feel okay, or if the boys could just love me enough to make me feel okay, or in my job, or whatever else I was grasping at to feel like I was wanted and I was loved and I was okay. Even though I had been in the arms of God and felt perfect, but I was still looking for it for an outside source. In fact, I was wandering around thinking, where's all that love I felt here? Where will I ever find it? And the key was when I finally looked within myself instead of looking out there. When I finally realized, oh, to love unconditionally, I get to love myself unconditionally. And when that happened, the healing began. Because I was never going to find it out there. It had to be felt within. And even in my Christian upbringing, this Jesus fellow said, the kingdom of God is within you. Don't look out there for it. And I began to maybe grasp what that meant a little more, that it is within us. We are divine beings. We do have the power to create our own situations if we embrace ourselves that way and do so.
And I was having a pretty good day when I died. The sun was shining, the skies were blue. I didn't realize that I would end up in an ICU at the end of the day. One of the first things that happened to me is I was greeted on the other side. I was greeted with the words of, "Welcome, beloved one. You are blessed. You are honored." The first part of our reading this morning talks about that. If we had any understanding of how honored we are for being here, doing what we're doing, living the struggles that we live, and the joys. Think about a rock star, a world-famous scientist, a preacher that's known throughout the world, something or someone that you look up to with such reverence, and that pales in comparison to what they feel for us and how honored we are in their eyes. And if we could carry that with us here every day, how much different would it be?
My mother had been watching for me my whole life. And, you know, there were some things in the 60s I wasn't so happy that she might have seen. But she didn't care, because there's no judgment there. There is no judgment. None whatsoever. That's the second most important, or one of the most important things I learned. God does not judge us. I was there in the heart of God, which is what all of us are. I had returned to the heart of God, and I knew that I was not judged at all. Because God knows when we're down here on earth, playing in these little human play suits. It's sort of like those things we dress our kids in when it's cold, and they're all bundled up, and they have boots, and they have socks, and they have idiot mittens and hats and scarves wrapped around their heads, and they're like, you know, they know that that's what it's like, pretending to be a human, which we all decided we would pretend to do. So if one of your kids is all dressed up like that, and you say, "Here, feel this. Doesn't that feel interesting?" They can't feel it because they got mittens on. So they make mistakes. They think, "Oh, maybe it's this, or maybe it's that," and they might guess about what it is because they can't really feel it because they're muffled. And of course, that's how we are as human beings. We're muffled, and we don't have. We can hear our guidance, and from inside and from outside, and we can, try to understand what it's trying to tell us, and we can try to act accordingly, but it's all muffled. So we do our best, and sometimes we don't do so well. Some of those things in the 60s especially. But there's no judgment. There's none whatsoever. My relatives were all just happy to see me. They were so proud of me, and I'm like, well, I haven't done anything. They were proud of me. Just getting up every single morning and trying again. Especially on the days when it's been bad. They were so proud of me. What courage it took to do that. What courage it took to be on planet Earth, pretending to be human, pretending to be separate, willingly muffling our connection to all that is, pretending that we're flawed and limited. What courage that takes. They were amazing. And I'm standing there like, well, I've never done anything important. They said, oh, you've done the most important thing that exists.
Others who have had NDEs talk about the incredible, indescribable, unconditional love that they existed within when they were out of their bodies. And I experienced the same thing, but for me, the phrase unconditional love, it doesn't work very well for me. For one thing, unconditional is a condition, and I'm very literal. And aside from that, the word love in the English language is pretty sloppy. You know, we love everything from French fries to our mothers. So I'm going to try to describe this feeling using different words. In this non-physical state of being, there's a profound sense of belonging. Everything about everyone that exists is not only accepted, but admired, respected, recognized, and celebrated. There's a cooperative, co-passion for being that permeates everything that I experienced. Everything there is effortless. It is just so easy. It's blissful, and it's filled with a joy that is so fundamental, it's only really remarkable from outside of that state of being. So imagine that everything you have ever thought, imagined, experienced, dreamed, or created was recognized to be valuable. To you, yourself, and to everyone else, to all that exists. Imagine that no matter what you do or how you express yourself, you belong and are valued. This is true. What was known to me, what was so basic as to be assumed, was just that we are each intrinsically valuable. And everything we experience matters, not just to ourselves, but to each other and to all that is. I use the phrase all that is instead of God, source, universe, whatever. A lot of those words have just personal connotations that limit my ideas. And so when I say all that is, it includes all that is. So that's the term that I'll be using. My experience is that we're always within and expressions of all that is, which is a beautiful force of infinitely curious and creative energy and awareness. How can we be anything but perfect? We are all that is, just as much as it is us. We are created by it, it creates us. We participate in it, it participates in us. We extend it, and it extends us. We are each individual expressions of the single infinite awareness. We are one, and we are each perfect, exactly as we are. We're so used to thinking in terms of hierarchies. The healer is more important than the addict. The teacher is more important than the arms dealer. These hierarchies of value are not real. I don't care how dull or weird or messed up we think our lives are here in the physical world. I can assure you that all of us are having a valuable experience. And I don't care how special we think we are. We We are each uniquely special, every single one of us. Our experience extends and enhances everything that exists. We are each infinitely creative beings, having an amazing experience just by being here. From the perspective out of body, it was understood that it takes some skill to even exist in the physical body, in the physical world. It takes a skill of focus to maintain consciousness within a physical body, and then to participate in a collective, cooperative, creative experience of being in this physical world. So we're all amazing. We're all jet pilots flying 50 feet off the deck, upside down. We are very cool. Just by showing up here, just by showing up.
And I'm watching this fragment of energy, and I could feel this love and kindness and compassion enter from the back and go out through the solar plexus. And I just felt the most complete love, and the voice began to speak with me. And it was at that moment I realized I was having a conversation with God. It wasn't the man in the beard and the staff. It wasn't any of that. It was energy. It was love. It was compassion. And I got to look down at Mother Earth, and I could see all the atrocities that were being done to our planet. I looked down and I could see pharmaceutical companies making drugs that cured cancer, but yet created 3 more diseases. I could see our politicians, not just in America, but all around the world. We were voting, putting people in power who were so eager to take their power away from us for the name of profit and greed. Over and over and over, I went from country to state to towns all over the world, watching a corrupt system that was about to happen and was already happening. Think about that. Our power going to people who use it against us. Sounds pretty current today, doesn't it? Over and over. Then I saw the abuse of the animal kingdom. Dolphin, bear, sea lions, walruses, cats, horses. Over and over, I could feel inside of me such compassion, but there wasn't judgment, you guys. There wasn't, look what they're doing and how dare they do this, and how I wasn't angry. I would step back and I could feel compassion. And I also, when I was reviewing my own life, there wasn't judgment on my part. Peter, you should have been better. Why did you do that? How dare you do that? It was like, you could do a better job, Peter. I was kind to myself. And as I watched event after event after event, poverty, wars, all the stuff that we do to each other, to the planet, it just didn't make sense. And I said, no more, no more. Do you want to go back? The voice said. Do you want to go back? And I have to be honest with you, I'm in this place of peace and harmony. And it's not that I'm going, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. My mind is like, I'm floating. I feel great. I feel amazing. And again, just the abuse of the planet. But then something spectacular happened. Something amazing happened. I got the chance to see what I call the unsung hero. I got a chance to see doctors, nurses, teachers, housewives, vets, all those people doing deeds that no one else knew about. No one else knew what was going on. Just they were doing their job and doing the right thing because it is the right thing to do. Over and over in my consciousness, I kept feeling, you do the right thing because it is the right thing to do. Ask yourself that. Ask yourself that. Doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Because sometimes what I saw on the other side, I saw myself, I don't want to use the word failing, but just not shining.
There was a picture placed in my head of a memory of my original agreement of why I had come to Earth to begin with. And it was like I remembered and I went, oh, right. right. I think one of the things that I've thought about greatly is that one of the things that bothers me so tremendously about the metaphysical movement, in lieu of my experience, and in lieu of what I was shown, which I think if there's any message that I can give, it's not about meditating and leaving your body and taking your light being out of this earth. Indeed not. It is about bringing the light into this earth. Stay here. Be an anchor. Let the light come in through you into this world. Don't abandon this world. We need you. We need you here. We need you to be present. And we need you to be open with an open heart.
But the reality we're living towards is a lot bigger than we can imagine. But that's also been a long tradition. The Catholic Church often mentions these things through saints who said it's completely different. And that's also been my experience. It's completely different. It's a lot better. And nothing can go wrong. If I want to summarize this whole jumble, we're talking about 20 years of thinking and processing. If I could be able to summarize this in one sentence, a sentence that carries weight. Other sentences, however, seem very weird to me afterwards. Nothing can go wrong. And what does this mean? Your life? Of course I know. Due to my job, I'm confronted with cases where things go wrong badly, and that there are things that cannot be answered. That you might ask yourself, where is God? There cannot be a God. Thinking about God as a person, well, that's all very difficult, but in the end, I can still sum it up as nothing can go wrong. And this is life-changing.
I think my greatest joy in having had this experience is to let people know that we are cherished unconditionally, that there is no judgment on us in any way, that the universe loves us and is supporting us, and we are here to grow, yes, but it's about playing, it's about joy, it's about loving. It's not about fear, it's not about pain, it's not about judgment. Only those things were created by us and our ego. There isn't anything in reality other than love. And that is the gift, is that we are loved, and there's nothing to be afraid of on the other side. And there's nothing to be afraid of in living either. And I think that's my story, is live to your best ability. Have the greatest joy that you can for yourself and others.
You are all precious and beloved. Don't ever forget that. And everything that you do does matter to somebody else. Find out whatever it is that you do well and do it. Give to the world, give to your neighbors, give to others, because you have it within you. Everybody does. That special talent, that special gift.
I do have hope for this world, even in times like this, because there are a lot of people who have love in them. It may just be contagious, and it may affect the other person, because love is actually proven to heal. Love always wins, because it's where we came from. Everyone has talents. Everybody is useful for something. Somebody might be an artist. They can draw so well. Me, I was really into music. So I would try to use that as a positive thing to try to help people through tough times. Maybe they can listen to my music to get stressed out. Somebody might be a good cook. We all need food. You know, they have chefs, the most professional chefs. That's a talent. That's a gift. Somebody might be a great speaker. Everybody has talents, and everybody's useful in this world.
I believe that we are beautiful spiritual beings who are here for a very, very brief time in these clay vessels to learn lessons for our souls and to learn how to love one another better, to learn how to treat each other the way that God wants us to treat each other. And then I think we move forward. I believe that we are here with great purpose and on purpose. Do not think for a minute that you're an accident. And you were born to who you were born to. And you were with people that you are with now as a great divine plan. We learn from our families a lot sometimes that we don't want to learn. But they are teaching us as hopefully we are teaching them. I believe we're here to take care of the earth too, and all the animals, the plants, everything. And when we do that, my patients teach me that it's not about getting an award. It's not about getting a pat on the back or applause. It's because it's our duty and a really wonderful opportunity. You see, all those who tell me of their near-death experiences say they want to contribute in any way to make a difference in whatever their life has left for them here, in whatever little town they live in, whatever community, whatever business they're doing. And they love sharing their story, and they don't care whether you believe them or not. That does not matter to them. That's not a big deal to them. Doesn't matter, because they're safe in their stories. They love their stories, and it's all good for them. And I never tire of hearing another one.
If I only had a year to live, what would I do? If I only had a year to live, what would I do? And when I ask myself that question, I often write, then, what would I do? And that gives me direction and clarity. Okay, this is what I need to focus on. The other thing that I ask myself is, if I died today, what would my biggest regret be? Now, if I walked out of here today and I got hit by a car, what would I regret? For years, for me, one of those things was, if I die before I get my book done, I'll really regret that. And it motivated me. That question motivated me. And the final question that I ask is, how do I leave people? Think about this morning when you left your house, or the last time you left loved ones. How did you leave them? Did you tell them that you loved them? Did you hug them? Did you argue? Because if that's how you left them, they're going to carry that, as Garrett so wisely said, for eternity. They're going to carry that argument. As a grief counselor, I know that how people leave each other can be very traumatic later. So pay attention to those urges and tell people how much they mean to you. Author Norman Cousins says, death is not the greatest loss in life. The greatest loss in life is what dies inside of us while we live. So pay attention to what you desire. Garrett spoke beautifully to this lesson at 17. He said, don't leave anything unsaid. Tell people what they mean to you. Take risks. Do things you've never done before. Have a tremendous amount of fun. And don't worry about the future.
All we have to do is just love God with all our heart, and the way we do that is love each other unconditionally, because God is in every one of us. So when I'm loving you, I'm loving God. So if I'm not loving you, I'm not loving God. And so love God with all our heart, love each other like that, learn how to love unconditionally, and take care of this planet. If we all did that, we'd have heaven on earth right now.
So I said, what was my purpose? And this voice said to me, the same as every man. You were put on the earth to take care of the earth. And come to find out later, Adam did
tend the garden and keep it. Even before the fall, he had work to do. We as men are here to take care of the earth. It's one of our responsibilities as men. And that was very personal. He said, you're not to strip mine the earth, you're not to pollute the earth, you're not to destroy your home. And I was being indicted because I was responsible. I was a litterer. I was one that didn't care about nature or environment at all. And this was a beautiful home that God had created for me to live and enjoy. And he said, secondly, you're here for the animals. They look up to you. You're the one with the spirit. You're the one with reason, with intelligence, with the strength to change things, the ability to protect them and take care of them and do for them. They don't have that ability. And yet you destroy species after species. And I knew that I was responsible, partly responsible. I had hunted for sport. I had no concern for animals. I never showed any compassion for animals. I didn't have any compassion for animals or men. And he said, thirdly, and most importantly, you're here for each other.
People need to realize that perhaps getting to death is not going to be a great, fun thing to do. No one wants to look forward to death. But you can look forward to what's on the other side. It is such a beautiful feeling. I feel that we have such an amazing experience awaiting us, and that we don't end. Our consciousness continues on. So even though we shed that wetsuit of a body, you have a beautiful outcome awaiting you after the point of death. So don't fear it. Look forward to it. Change your life to also include a lot of love and a lot of helping others and focusing on good things, because those people who've had a near-death experience and gone beyond mine, that had a life review, often report that they feel what the other person felt when they were dealing with people throughout their life. So I think that all of us should kind of aim towards a good life review. So do good things. Go out there and have a happy life, enjoy it, enjoy every day, and find ways to be happy, because that's what we're here for. That's what our experience is for.
Death is a beginning, Ken. It's beautiful. There's the light. It's love. It's more beautiful. It's, if you really love somebody, you've got to be happy for where they're going. It's an adventure, and they're not alone. See, we're afraid of somebody being alone, but they're not alone. They aren't.
And not only not alone, but it seems like they're surrounded by this sort of atmosphere of love that it's very difficult to leave once you encounter it, isn't it?
It's beautiful. It is just as though, you're being held in a cradle of love and just being carried through the most beautiful, magical story God could ever create. And it's, I just can't explain it. It's marvelous.
So God swept me and showed me all of earth. And in showing me all of earth, I saw that the length of my life was the wink of an eye. And timelessness, time has no meaning. And I saw every human being on earth individualized. And I saw them loved in the same way that I was loved in heaven. And God said to me, in the way that I love you now, you know that I've always loved you. And it was self-evident to me that God's love is the size of the cosmos, the billions and billions of years that the universe has existed. And the greatest love I'd ever experienced in my life was a speck of dust in comparison. The immensity and infinite love of God is unbelievably overwhelming. And that's the love I'd always been loved with. And I knew that to be true. And I knew that every single human being was loved in the same way. But the difference between the human beings and me was that they couldn't see. They were still in the world with a veil, not knowing the immensity of love. Couldn't know it. Not built into the structure, but still loved nonetheless. And God showed me my parents in particular. And I could see their faces and I could see their suffering. And God said to me, all will be well with them, because all has always been well, and all will be well, and all is well, because I love them. And you know this to be true, and I knew it to be true, that in the end my parents would no longer suffer, because in death they would be immersed in the ocean of love.
Money is not who I am, and none of it is who I am. If I really get in touch with, I'm not the car, I'm not the house, I'm not the job, I'm not my partner, I'm not the shoes or the clothes or anything else. I am all of it. I am that I am. I am the divine. I am me, and me is enough just the way I am. And I can be my contribution in this universe without even trying, by just simply being me.
Be as you can be. Shine your light as brightly as you can. Embrace your uniqueness. Just realize who you are, get to know who you are, love yourself unconditionally, and just be yourself. And with those 5 things, I invite you to go and live your life fearlessly.